3 minutes.
OK， 我们皈依发心。诸佛正法众众尊，直至菩提我皈依。我以所行施等善，为利众生愿成佛。诸佛正法众众尊，直至菩提我皈依。我以所行施等善，为利众生愿成佛。诸佛正法众众尊，直至菩提我皈依。我以所行施等善，为利众生愿成佛。May those who attend the talk, may the talk go smoothly, and then may those who attend the talk one day also be able to join us to learn Master Chong Apa's teachings from Shifu and Lao Shi.
One minute.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to VenTalk Live. My name is Yang Hua, and it's an honor to be hosting together with Venerable Bonsu. And a bit about myself, I've been studying with BW Monastery for about 5 years, and I always cherish every opportunity to attend lessons because I will always learn something new. tonight we are going to discuss a topic that many people would consider as a taboo topic, which is mindfulness of death. Good evening, Venerable Pansi. Isn't it bad luck to be talking about death? Many people will also think that it is very morbid. Besides, it does not give Buddhism a very attractive image to be talking about suffering and death. And tonight we will be talking about death.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, Yao Hua, tonight we are going to talk about a topic that many people usually will feel uncomfortable about. However, do you remember last month we have confirmed that we have a precious human rebirth? There is a human life of leisure and opportunity. And that means we possess the conditions to solve the problem of birth and death. So, when the Buddha teaches us about mindfulness of death, he is just being wise and compassionate to us. His real purpose is really to teach us the solution to rebirth and death, because we already possess the conditions to solve it. For those who think talking about death is morbid and bad luck, let me first ask them a question. Do you buy life insurance and do retirement planning, Yao Hua?
Yes, Venerable. I still remember during my first encounter with the insurance. So it was during my school days, and there was this roadshow in the shopping center. And yes, I ended up purchasing a saving plan with them. And until today, I'm still paying for it. Yeah, and also for those who are working, for those under CPF, there are also plans that automatically helps us to prepare for our retirement.
So Yao Hua, why are you willing to save for old age when you're still so young? Don't you think it's bad luck and morbid to think about getting old, even though now you're nowhere near old age?
Okay, but because by looking at our parents and grandparents, we all know that it is a fact that one day we will become old and we will die eventually of old age. That is why it is good to start planning young, and especially with money. Just like our CPF money, a portion of our salary is automatically saved into our ordinary account, and so that one day when we need to purchase a flat, we have the money to do so. Yeah, so I really agree that we need to plan ahead. So in fact, one day I'll become old, and it is really good to be prepared. And in fact, it is also unwise not to plan ahead. Yeah. So by planning ahead, it will be less costly in comparison to if I were to start planning when I'm old. Yeah. So I always believe that the younger I start, and then it will be less expensive later on.
That is right, Yao Hua. If a person lives his life as if he will not grow old, and he spend all his money, doesn't take care of his health, doesn't save for old age, then we will consider him a very foolish person. By the time he realizes the need for it, it may be too late. So, it is only wise to plan and prepare for old age, because all of us will grow old. Wouldn't it be wiser to look one more step beyond old age to plan and prepare for death, since we all know all of us will die? So, the Buddha is not trying to scare us or being morbid when he taught us mindfulness of death. He is just being wise and compassionate by reminding us, since it's going to happen, are you doing anything to prepare for it?
Remember, it seems stressful to me. Why do we always have to be mindful of death? It sounds depressing that we need to remind ourselves that we will die. And if I were to die soon, I will choose not to do anything and stay at home and to do things that only make me happy. Yeah. So why does Buddha have to be so explicit? It makes many people feel uncomfortable even hearing the word death.
The Buddha is not trying to make us uncomfortable because he wants to scare us. It is because if we don't prepare for it now, it will be even more uncomfortable and terrifying when that day comes. On the other hand, if we are prepared, even if we meet with an unexpected terminal illness, we will be able to accept what has happened and face it calmly and without fear. My mother is a very good example. She passed away in July this year of brain cancer. When she was told of the diagnosis in April, she was able to take it very calmly and fearlessly, even though her last days were very uncomfortable because there was a 6 cm tumor in her brain and causing pressure in her head. But she was able to live each day meaningfully and with dignity. She was still attending her Buddhism class using Zoom 2 days before she passed away. And then on the morning when she passed away, she insisted that we help her get out of bed to make offerings to the Buddha. The doctor told us that he had never seen anyone as strong as her. Patients at her advanced stage of brain cancer would have been bedridden weeks ago. After she passed away, we did chanting for her for 24 hours. After that, when we cleaned her body was still very soft and supple, as if she was sleeping. I'm very confident that she will be reborn in the happy realms.
This must be a blessing of the Buddhas that your mother has passed away in a remarkable way. Her diligence in her spiritual practice helps her at the time of her death.
Yes, so while it's true that this topic may make us feel uncomfortable, but it's actually very necessary, and it's very necessary. In fact, it is good to feel uncomfortable because if we are not afraid, then we will not take any action. But of course, the Buddha doesn't just stop at making us feel uncomfortable. The Buddha has a very effective solution for us to prepare for death and even beyond into our future lives. So, we may be uncomfortable now, but if we follow the Buddha's guidance and put his teachings into practice, then we don't have to be afraid or feel depressed when death comes. So, the purpose of being mindful of death is so that we will not be preoccupied with our immediate concerns, so much so that we neglect to prepare for death. Just like we shouldn't spend all our money on our immediate needs and neglect to save for old age. And the best way to prepare for death and beyond is to learn the Buddha's teachings and put it into practice. In other words, by being mindful of death, it will give us the impetus to set aside time to learn the Buddha's teachings.
That sounds good, Venerable, but especially it really sounds good for those who are afraid to die. But if I were to think about my past, before I started learning Lambrim, there was this famous phrase that I remember: "You only live once." And this mindset was to live by the moment. And come to think of it, it is scary. Death to me only happens to old people and people who die in accident. And I will never think about it happening to me. And it was only when I started learning about mindfulness of death in Lambrim classes, I start to be more mindful about death. However, I still feel that there are many people who are not afraid of death. And why should we be afraid of something that will come to us eventually?
If we are not afraid of death, there could be a few reasons. Okay, so the first reason is that we are already prepared for it. Being prepared means that we have learned and put the Buddha's teachings into practice to live our life virtuously and meaningfully, and have the confidence that we will be able to gain a good rebirth in our future lives, like the example shown by the story of my mother. If this is the reason we are not afraid of death, then it is good. And it is in fact what the Buddha wants us to achieve when he taught us about mindfulness of death. But another reason we are not afraid is because we do not know what the dying process is like. And either we rather not know, or we have a fantasized version of it, thinking that death is painless and beautiful process. Both these attitudes are like an ostrich burying its head into the sand, thinking it is safe because you don't see the danger. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to the issue of living and dying. The wise will want to learn about the truth and then take actions in advance to avoid suffering if he knows the truth is going to be painful. We should heed the advice of the lineage masters. Master Gamapa, he said that now we should be frightened by death. At the time of death, we should be fearless. But if you look at us, now we are the opposite. We are not afraid now. And then at the moment of death, he said that we will dig our fingernails into our chest because we will be so frightened.
Yes, I agree that we need to be prepared in order to take actions in advance. But unlike old age, where you suffer for many years, if you're not prepared for it, the dying process is short compared to old age. Even if it is painful, the brave just need to endure through it.
That again is too short-sighted. Even if you are not concerned about the dying process, will you be concerned about your next life? Do you want to leave your happiness in your next life to chance?
No.
We learned in last month's VenTalk that the chances of being reborn in the miserable realms is like dust on the great earth, whereas the chance of being reborn in the happy realms is like the dust on the fingernails. Remember? Not only is the suffering in the miserable realms more severe than in humans, but the time spent there is very, very long, much longer than our old age. Our old age may last maybe only for 20 to 30 years. But once we are reborn in the miserable realms, it could be 20, 30, or even longer, 20, 30 eons, or even longer, before we can be reborn again in the happy realms. So, when the Buddha teaches us about mindfulness of death, the Buddha is not teaching us just to prepare for death, but actually more importantly, is also to prepare for our future life.
Granted that we need to be afraid of death now, so that we can take actions to prepare for our death and our future life. But I do always have this kept in mind that we need to be remembered about this. It's just like now I've already taken refuge in the three jewels, and according to the Buddha, we will not fall into miserable realms after taking refuge. So why can't we just relax now and not always be reminded about death and our future lives?
Rejoice to you, Yao Hua, for having already taken refuge in the three jewels. It is true, it's very true, that we will not fall into the miserable realms after we have taken refuge. But remember, taking refuge is not just about going through the refuge ceremony. And then after that, you're safe from the miserable realms. The refuge ceremony is just a start that initiates you into the count of Buddhists, initiates you into this group of Buddhists. But in order for the refuge to be genuine and not lost, there are actually precepts of refuge that we need to learn and observe. After having gone through the refuge ceremony, we will talk about what it means to take refuge in the future VenTalk. But for now, the question is, after taking refuge, how do you ensure that you will not forsake your refuge? How can you be constantly reminded that you are now a Buddhist and you need to live your life according to the Buddha's teachings? Even for the other religions, in order for them to be guaranteed of rebirth in the heavens, they must maintain their faith in their God and live their life according to the teachings of the religion. It's not just saying, I believe in you and then all is safe. So if we are not reminded about death, it is highly likely that we will be distracted by our daily concerns and then put practicing the Buddha's teachings aside.
Yes, I do agree that we need to be reminded. Otherwise, we will be distracted by our daily concerns and putting aside the practicing of Buddha's teaching. But everyone knows that we will die one day. Why keep reminding us about it?
Yes, all of us know that we will die one day. But the problem is, we think we will not die anytime soon. Why? Because we have never experienced death and we have forgotten about our past life. So since we never have this experience of dying, then the thought that we will die anytime soon will not arise in our mind if we do not consciously remind ourselves of it. So with each passing day, people will think, I will not die today. No, I will not die today. I don't even think that I will die tomorrow. So we keep clinging to this thought that we will not die today until even the moment of death. This reaction is observed frequently in people who are initially diagnosed with a terminal illness. So much so that the medical professionals formulate it into a model called the DEPDA model to help terminally ill patients cope with the shock of the diagnosis. The first reaction is usually denial and disbelief. The terminally ill patient would rather believe that the diagnosis is wrong, and most people will go get the second opinion. Then, when the reality of the diagnosis sets in, the reaction then turns into why me, turns into anger. Then this is then followed by bargaining and depression before finally being able to accept the reality. So even when people are told they have a terminal illness, they still can't accept that they will die anytime soon. How much more when you are still healthy? So if we are obstructed by such an attitude that I will not die today, or I will not die anytime soon, and do not bring its remedy to mind, you will continue to think that you will remain in this life.
But how does that cause misery to us other than taking a longer time to accept death when it comes?
The problem is, as long as you have this attitude that you will not die anytime soon, you will continuously think only of how to achieve immediate and short-term happiness and evade immediate and short-term suffering. So you will only be thinking, I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that. And then you will spend your time and effort to get those things that you think you need. And you will not think about the need for learning the Buddha's teachings because you will not think that it is important to prepare for death and future lives, and also how to solve the problem of cyclic existence. So even if you decide to learn and put the Buddha's teachings into practice, your purpose is only to get happiness of this life through the Buddha's teachings. So your virtue and the good karma is only to the extent. In other words, you are not creating any good karma for your future lives. Not only that, even if you try to engage in practices directed towards future lives, you will not be able to prevent the laziness of procrastination. You will think that, I think tomorrow still have time, I will do it tomorrow. Then tomorrow you think, maybe tomorrow will be better, today I'm too busy, and so on. So you will be distracted. Okay, you will pass your time in distractions such as work, entertainment, socializing, sleep, lethargy, senses talk, eating, drinking, entertainment with friends, going out with friends. So doing all this, you will not attain proper achievement in your Buddhist practice, which will only come through great effort and giving up some short-term happiness. And then, of course, when we forget about death and future lives, the chances of us performing non-virtuous acts and hoping to get away with it is very high. So this will lead us to creating negative karma, and this will take effect at death, leading us to a painful death and rebirth in the miserable realms.
Okay, Venerable, that sounds really scary. So is the Buddha trying to scare us into practicing the Buddha's teaching?
No, of course not. The Buddha is just pointing out the facts. If you neglect to think long term, if you neglect to think about death, issues of death and future life, then those are the kind of danger that you will face. So the Buddha is just pointing out the facts, and I'm just listing them here since you asked. But it's actually not that scary if we look at it objectively. If we understand and the benefits of practicing mindfulness of death, then it actually really makes a lot of sense for us to practice it.
Okay, so what are the benefits of practicing mindfulness of death?
There are many, many benefits. And some of them are probably also known to those who think further ahead about their future. The overall benefit is, of course, what I mentioned earlier. If you prepare for death now, if you prepare for future life now, then you will not be afraid when death comes. And then you will be reborn in a happy place because you have already created all the necessary causes for that to happen. More specifically, by reflecting on your future and that your lifespan is limited, we will then make the attempt to spend time on things that really matters to us at the end of our lives and on things that we can bring to our next life, and not just going along with the flow, going along with our immediate feeling about happiness and our immediate concerns. If you can do that, then you will be able to treasure what is really precious to you. You wouldn't take for granted your parents. You wouldn't take for granted your family, your good health, your virtuous friends, that they will always be there for you. You wouldn't take for granted that you will have all the time in the world to say the things you need to say to them and do the things you need to do with them.
Yes, I heard this saying that on their deathbed, no one regrets not having to work more overtime or earning more money. In fact, one of the top 5 regrets that is they wish that they had not worked so hard and spent more time with their families.
Yes, so practicing mindfulness of death also leads to being satisfied with what you have and not overindulging in things you can't bring to your next life, such as how much money and material possessions you want to accumulate. You will also think about doing virtuous act to accumulate good karma for your future life, and also to avoid non-virtuous act to prevent creating bad karma. Then, this will then also give you the motivation to set aside time. In other words, to give higher priority and put in effort to learn and practice the Dharma. Okay, and then in doing so, you will then be able to make full use of your precious human rebirth, which is to plant the causes for another precious human rebirth. Then your chances of being reborn as a human being again will not be like the dust on the fingernails, because you have already created the karma for it to happen. You are not leaving it to chance. One more benefit. Just now we mentioned that about taking refuge. In fact, if we don't think about death and our future lives, our refuge will only be empty words. If we want to be able to take sincere refuge, we have to think about death and future life, and how at the time of death, only the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can help us. Only the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are able to guide us to our next life at the time of our death. And if you do this often, if you think about this often and develop it into a habit, then at the time of your death, you will then be able to remember to seek the help to guide you into your next life. If you don't do this, then chances are, when you meet with danger, when your life is in danger, you will not think of them.
So remember, how do we actually practice mindfulness of death? It still sounds very morbid to me to keep thinking about dying all the time.
Mindfulness of death, practicing mindfulness of death is not just keep thinking, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. It's not like that. There's actually a technique that the Buddha has taught us. It's really to make use of 9 facts of life and death, okay, to generate in us a strong motivation to learn the Buddha's teachings. This motivation must be strong enough to not only spur us into taking action to start learning the Buddha's teachings, but every time when we start to slack, okay, we will be able to use mindfulness of death to remind ourselves, okay, to generate the enthusiasm to learn the Buddha's teachings again. Remembering this purpose is very important. Otherwise, we will fall into the undesired outcome of becoming very negative about life. Okay, but time is a bit short now. I think there's not enough time to actually discuss how to properly practice mindfulness of death. So we will leave that to the next session. Hopefully tonight's discussion on why we need to practice mindfulness of death will generate an interest in you to come back next month to learn about how to practice it properly. Okay, so maybe you can do a summary of what we have learned today before we end.
Okay. Thank you, Venerable, for sharing this interesting topic on mindfulness of death. So yes, please allow me to summarize tonight's topic. From our discussion tonight, I gathered that death is not just, it is not a bad luck topic to talk about. And although it does make us feel uncomfortable and afraid of death, however, being not afraid of death does not help us in preparing our future lives. And also, as mentioned by Venerable just now, by taking refuge in the three jewels, we will not go into miserable realms, but we still need to put in constant effort to maintain this refuge. And we also talk about the problems of not practicing mindfulness of death, and also the benefits of practicing mindfulness of death. So yes, this is my summary for tonight, and we are not done yet on this topic. So do continue to join us in our next session of VenTalk with Venerable Bensi to continue to learn how to be mindful of death. And thank you, Venerable, for your time. And on behalf of everyone, we would like to invite Venerable to do the dedication for us.
Okay, so let us do the dedication. Okay, so please put your palms together and then we will recite the dedication verse together. May these profound merits and virtues be dedicated to all sentient beings. May we eliminate all karmic obstacles, and together may we attain the state of Buddhahood. Okay, so that is the end of today's session. Do join us again next month, the first Saturday of the new year. Okay, to learn.
New Year, so fast.
We will talk about that, how time passes very fast, and make use of that to motivate you into learning the Buddha's teachings. That is actually part of practicing mindfulness of death. Okay, so join us next year.
Next year, yes. So see everyone next year. Yes. Be healthy and strong.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.